Consider This, a news and information program recorded on the campus of the University of Nebraska at Omaha. From the Fireside Lounge in the Milo Bale Student Center, here is your host, Carol Schrader.
Hello and welcome back to UNO. This week on Consider This, we have some folks who have been sort of gadflies in our community. They're trying to get us to think about things, and they've been doing it for a number of years, almost 20 years now, I think, in Omaha. They can correct me if I'm wrong. I'd like you to meet the folks from Omaha Together One Community. Dennis Walsh is immediate past co-chair of that group. Margaret Gilmore is a member of the current leadership team with OTOC and past chair of the work committee, and you'll hear more about that. And Sherry Cody is a member of the current leadership team of Omaha Together One Community. Now, we're going to talk about economic development and jobs and some other things, but maybe not in the way you've traditionally heard it talked about. So I'm going to open it up. Let's see, eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Let's go to the middle first so that we don't look like we're playing sides. You want the city and your member organizations to sort of look at things in a new way.
That's right. OTOC is interested in helping to recreate democracy so that everybody takes part in the dialogue about the decisions that we make together for our community.
Now, that's something we all theoretically wanted to happen. What hasn't been happening in your mind that makes you, think that we need to kind of shake things up a little bit?
Well, Carol, part of what happens and has been happening is that people often don't get involved in the issues until they've already been framed by someone else. And our goal is to be there at the beginning and frame the issue, have people frame that issue for themselves. We're trying to approach the issues in a different way so that people are thinking for themselves and thinking together. And that hasn't been the tradition normally in approaching issues and thinking them through. So.
Okay, let's talk about economic development then. Traditionally, when we hear plans and thoughts and concepts and proposals for economic development, they come from the corporate side of things, the chambers of commerce, companies that might like to locate or get some economic incentives. You think that maybe we should be looking at it from another point of view.
Well, that's right. In the way we've tended to make our public policy around here, economic development, in one sense, is a little broadly defined. Obviously, we want our local economy to be better. We want there to be good jobs for people. But by the time we get around to making public policy, it's really in reaction to particular situations, and usually in reaction to worrying about a particular company leaving town or the state, or the chances for a particular company to come.
Now, why we didn't get BMW, or will Union Pacific leave, or something right. Along those lines.
And so we're sort of in a crisis mode. The debate is framed by a few people who have a great stake in that. And the interests of the neighborhoods and our families and our congregations, we haven't been thinking about them and talking about them. So it's important to have jobs for everybody who lives here, but we have to remember too that it takes more than just an employer to create jobs. It takes employees. It takes people who are skilled and talented and want to live in Omaha or in Nebraska to take those jobs. And so economic development realistically includes really a very wide variety of things. How is our community doing? How are our schools for the children of the people who work here? How are the parks? How are the libraries? What are the chances for people to do the things that are in their best interest?
One of the things you have to do is take a look at sort of a base of statistics to find out kind of where you are, where you've been. And Dennis, I know you've been putting together maps and some interesting maps. Let's take a look at the first one. We're looking at 1970 median family income in Omaha. And these are in what we know is the city limits of Omaha. And what should someone looking at that, they see dark red, and they say dark blue, and they see white, and some gradations in between. So what are they seeing now? What does that represent?
Well, the white is the median family income. At that time was about $10,000, which translates to about $46,000 today. The median family in Omaha, the middle family in Omaha was making that. The red is areas where the families were making more than that. The darker red, the more they were making. The blue areas are where they're making less than, we're making less than that in 1970.
The darkest blue being the least under the median.
Least, that's
Yeah.
right.
Okay, let's jump
So
20.
what we see
okay, go ahead.
in there is you see a lot of white, a lot of light pink, a lot of light blue. That most people in 1970 live in areas pretty close to the median, kind of middle-class neighborhoods.
And
And
just-
generally that was what we had in Omaha, and our economy generally was very much bunched in the middle at that time.
And speaking of middle, sort of as a point of reference, the left side of where the white is 72nd Street. And to give you kind of an idea of where that is in Omaha, the far left being about 168th, and of course you can see where the river is on the east side. All right, so you see where the median income is, you see where the relative amount of blue versus red. Okay, you want to jump to the 2000
Sure.
census? Let's do that.
So now in 2000, Omaha's income, median income, is up to about 50,000.
Now that's good news.
So that's good. There's been about a 10% increase in income, median income, over
Adjusted
that time.
for the
Adjusted
time
for
period.
inflation, that's right. But we don't find all areas of town doing as well. That we were hoping for a situation where a rising tide was lifting all boats. President Kennedy used to describe our economy that way. But in a lot of areas, we see a lot of neighborhoods that are going backwards, that have not kept up. And that those areas that were light blue and light pink, in often cases now have turned to medium blue and have changed from light pink to light blue. So most neighborhoods east of 680, most neighborhoods have not kept up the pace.
Okay, so what does that mean in terms of kind of the fiscal health of our community, you know, from 1970 to 2000?
Well, the economic conference that we're going to have is kind of taking a chance to stop and look, how are we doing? What is working and what isn't? Because some things are not working. And it's not enough to say that Omaha is prospering. We have to look more closely. Why is it not prospering in certain areas?
The median has gone up, but on the lower side of the median, they've fallen behind. Am I correct in that
Right.
assessment? And
That's
also the gap, Margaret, between, you know, those that were, you know, the dark colors, the least family income and the most family income, the middle area has become larger. Isn't that right?
Yeah, when Dennis worked on creating these maps, and I got to help some of the time, and so you can look at the data just as raw data, and the median income, of course, is the one right in the middle. And so we looked at the data and at how it mapped out in 1970 and 2000. We also looked at in each of these census tracts comparatively from 1970 to 2000, how has that particular census tract changed? And well over half, a very large majority of the census tracts in Omaha are doing worse in terms compared to the median income today, or in 2000, than they were in 1970. There were many more people on the clumped at the bottom, and very few clumped at the top. And so this middle, kind of this white and light blue and light pink, this middle income, you could just tell from looking at the data when you listed it in a row, had shrunk quite a bit. So the income is a lot more concentrated, a lot more people have fallen behind, even though the average, the aggregate number is good. So that's a real concern. And what do we need to do for the best interests of our neighborhoods?
Okay, that's where this kind of whole sense of household and how we spend our household monies. You're using a Greek term, and I've tried looking up, but there's different Greek terms that are used to display this, and the one I found, and yours is slightly different, is oikonomia, and there's some variations on that. And basically, what does that mean? My Greek isn't that good.
It's talking about the household and public are the two components of it, but it's not household in the sense that we think of it today. Household in the times of the Greeks at that point was a public like an extended family and you know,
So
part of a
community is
village,
kind of a
and
household, or a
it was
state
big.
could be.
Right, and for us as citizens of Nebraska, it's our public household is the one thing we have in common, and that's taxes. And as we talk about the public household, we're talking about how are those resources allocated and who pays the cost.
The household budget, so to
The
speak.
household budget, right.
And there is concern, or at least you want to look at, where we spend our money and allocate it throughout the community, a community or the state. Am I on the right?
That's right.
And you're
And
going
then
to be
who pays that money in so that it's available to allocate?
Okay. So this is a lot to grasp. But you're going to have some sessions with, and I should mention that OTOC is made up of a conglomerate sort of mainly churches, synagogues, and some mainly that would be the religious, but there's also some community groups in it, and it's
Right.
pretty widespread throughout the community, just to give
Right,
people a point of reference.
congregations and neighborhood associations all over the city.
All right, so you're going to call these people together in about a week or so, and you're going to present these figures. And what is the main thing you're saying? We need to look at
Where we should be spending our government money to have the best kind of economy in Omaha for our families. There's how much should we be spending on schools, on subsidies to create jobs, different programs on the riverfront. What would work the best? Because they're all limited, at least most of them.
and they're becoming more limited every time we hear a new state forecasting projection.
Sure.
I think this past week, $100 million more dollars less than we thought we were going to lose anyway was the
Sure.
most recent one.
You know, nearly everything is limited. I mean, LB 775 is one of the things we'll be looking at it. That doesn't have limits. That's an entitlement, which there's no cap on how much the government spends.
Okay, we're going to talk about that, but so
That's an example, looking at different ways that we're spending our money and what should we do to benefit the neighborhoods.
And another thing, as I understand it, isn't just how we spend it, but where that money's coming from. What group of people, what corporations, I mean, who is putting the money in that, and then I guess what the aggregate community is getting back, or parts of that community. Is that
Right.
fair?
And also, who is in on the discussion of where that money comes from and where that money is spent? The discussion is very limited right now. And so we want to help frame the dialogue. We want people to be thinking, all of our people to be thinking about, what should our public money be spent on? What would benefit our community? What would benefit the future of our children? And we want to be sitting at the table when those decisions get made. All those public decisions that are made are debates and negotiations. Lots of different interests are represented. We just feel like, in general, people's interests are very underrepresented.
You mean regular folk?
Regular folk like us. But it's hard. You know, when somebody talks about the economy, it's a very scary word, and most of us just blank out. We just sort of say other people are experts in the economy, and it's something that nature will take its course in the economy. We can't have any effect on it.
Oh, yeah, and we don't have, we're just a worker of trying to feed our families and, take care of our personal responsibilities, and that's sort of beyond our ken. You know.
But in fact, if we're in on the debate, the health of the economy is determined by the public decisions that get made. The public decisions shape how the economy goes.
Okay, let's take LB 775, which is back in public discussion. LB 775 was the name of what is now a law, but it was the name when it was a bill, and so everybody sort of stuck to that. But that was an economic development package that was intended to create jobs in Nebraska by offering tax incentives to businesses. Is that fair enough? Mm-hmm. And it has been in the news a lot lately because a number of people are questioning how much it is living up to that promise right now, and at whose expense. And we haven't figured out what we're going to do with this thing, and we haven't figured out where we want to be on economic development, because we do have to, in some fashion, have to compete. So when you're framing the kinds of things you're concerned about, let's take LB 775 as an example. Who should be in on that discussion? I mean, I guess I could be if I knew enough about it, but it
Right.
scares me.
And I think that there are a couple of things connected with LB 775. One is that it's not a very transparent bill in the sense that we don't know exactly who's getting the money and what jobs were created from that money and what benefit has come to us as citizens in the past 15 years.
There's a lot
and
that
it's
is
that
confidential.
part that we think should be more transparent. It's not saying that LB 775 is bad or it should be eliminated or any of those things, but make it transparent so people can see what the benefit was or was not for them in the past 15 years. I think that part of it is important.
I've also heard it say that I don't know, that the original intent, which was to create new jobs, preferably to bring new corporations, into our state, or create a lot of expansion on the part of existing corporations here, that seems to be, we've moved away from that, in that almost any corporation can qualify.
It's kind of morphed from being an incentive program, which it was set out to be, to becoming an entitlement program. So it's not that the state pursues corporations with incentives for them to bring business and jobs into Nebraska. It's if any business decides and they meet the guidelines to do capital improvements or hire employees, then they're automatically entitled to the money.
Okay,
Which is what makes Nebraska have such a higher rate.
And
compared to
so
other
it's
states.
hard for anybody to be in on the conversation because who can evaluate?
And-
the
and who's
information is not
anti-job?
there.
I mean, there's this-
nobody is.
Nobody.
But could we have the information to evaluate? Would the jobs that we paid for with LB 775,
If they still
would
exist, or
were they even good jobs? Would they have come anyway? Are they just replacing jobs that were cut? We can't evaluate. That's, I guess, part of the bottom line. And so who can be in on that conversation if there's not public information to be able to evaluate that?
Okay, so you have your session and you work with your members and you're telling them to be involved and get their groups and peripheral organizations and their neighbors involved. Come on, do you think really that they're going to listen to regular folks when it has to do with complicated economic things?
Sure, if the people are organized. Organized people have power. The trouble is, we talk to each other at the dinner table maybe, but we don't talk to each other in large enough groups to be able to understand that we have common interests. And when we have common interests, we can do common research together, and we can sit at the table with that kind of power.
One of the things that I know that you would like to take a look at, a more public look at, as an example of how we spend our resources, is what was promised with regard to the Arena Convention Center in terms of what we would spend and what we would get. And you're using this as an example or something you want to ponder more, you want the community to ponder more. It's kind of a done deal. Okay, we have an Arena Convention Center and we've committed to paying it. So how do you frame the discussion knowing that it's kind of a done deal?
We want people, kind of like LB 775, we want people to know how it's working. We have to, in order to judge how successful it will be, we have to have the basic facts. And so far, not a lot of that has become public. But recently we spoke with the city finance department and got information on how, from the bond payers' point of view, things are going. Because remember, we have to pay over $400 million over the next 30 years on the Arena Convention Center.
What did you find out?
Plan was that it would be $160 million in property taxes would be used to pay it back. Conventions are not coming in at the rate expected. We're only getting 20% of the conventions that were expected. Therefore, the city has changed its thinking, and instead of $160 million in property taxes, it will be $300 million in property taxes. So they're now adjusting for an additional $140 million in property tax money that will be paid over the life of the bonds.
Well, my math tells me that's something like double, close.
Right, 90% increase.
And these are property taxpayers. And as I said, it's a done deal in the sense that once you get bonds, et cetera. So how do we look at that as an example of what we might want to and I'm not saying whether the Arena Convention Center, I think downtown Omaha is pretty cool right now, personally. But in terms of public policy and good decisions, how can we learn, from what you're concerned about?
We just acknowledge that there are trade-offs, that we can't spend hundreds of millions of dollars on the riverfront without cutting back other places when you need all that property tax money. So when the libraries are closed, the parks aren't getting mowed, the streets are 20 years behind of where they need to be, people need to understand that that's the trade-off, and that it's not free, and that basic city services are being cut as a result of those problems.
But let me just play devil's advocate for a minute, that I might say, yes, what you point out may be true, but there are also some things that happen. Because we could do that all at once, we were able to make some infrastructure all at one time that would have cost us much more if we would have done it piecemeal. We were able to take care of the sewer problems on the north side because we could do it all in one fell swoop.
We took care of the sewer problems on the riverfront, but not in North Omaha.
Okay.
That was a choice to do one or the other. But we're just asking to be told the truth so people know we're going to do this, but these are going to be the effects on the rest of the city. Just tell us the truth.
The bottom line is, because these funds are committed now and revised upward, that we're going to have to come up with these property tax dollars. No matter what the economy does, we're going to have to pay that. And
Initially, in the debate, OTOC was framing from our standpoint the debate too, and OTOC never said we shouldn't develop the riverfront, but said let's talk about the use of public funds and realistic projections and where that money comes from. So at the table, whenever a decision is made, there are various interests, and it's a negotiation. But this is just sort of a theme running through what OTOC does. We want to be at the table. Everybody's interest should be at the table. And we have to understand the trade-offs that are being made.
one of the things that OTOC has been very involved with that sort of fits into this is that it was a conscious decision on your part to work in unionizing the meatpacking plants in Omaha with the union, the United Food and Commercial Workers Union, and others. And you know, that was a decision because of what had happened economically in that particular industry.
Yeah, you can see, if you referred back to the maps we showed earlier, South Omaha in 1970 and compared to South Omaha in the year 2000 is much darker blue now. In 1970, the meatpacking plants were unionized, and we know people who were making wages about up to $20 an hour in today's money.
I went to school in South Omaha in high school.
Did you work in the meatpacking
I
plant?
didn't work, but the parents of many of
Yes.
the people I went to high school did. And although it was tight, they could pretty much support a family on one income because mothers didn't work as much, and paid for some Catholic schooling, which was extra. And so I knew that even though it was tight, it was considered a workable income
Yep.
for those small homes in South Omaha.
It was a living wage, and many of those families sent their children to college, and their children became professionals. So today in the meatpacking plants, they're pretty much ununionized, and the wages are $7 to $9 an hour. And it has made a huge impact on the economy of South Omaha and of those neighborhoods. It's a much different place today than it would have been if you'd visited there 30 years ago.
So that is one aspect of economic development that sort of took a slide, and it did all over the country.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was the issue of productivity, so they increased the line speeds and more people got hurt, and those are
Mm-hmm.
facts. So you were looking at that aspect of economic development in that community.
That's right. And it also ties in with the well-being of the community, and also the well-being of the community can be increased if the individual workers have some voice. So the way for workers to get a voice is to be part of an employee association, in this case a union with United
United Food and
UFCW.
Commercial, so that's what I was citing this as an example of how you have kind of zeroed in on one area. LB 775 would be a whole different kind of thing if you decided to zero in on that more.
Right.
Just because they're different
Right.
kind of creatures.
And so one of the things we'll want to talk about at the economic conference is the big picture. understanding the economy, understanding that we have a piece of it, understanding what it does to us, how we participate.
Understanding that we
in-
can understand it.
That's right. That's exactly right.
That's always been my problem.
And learning more about what our faith traditions have said about the need for everybody to have a share in the economy. So understanding big picture things like that, so that then we can concentrate in an intense sort of way on little pieces of it, and it
Specific
makes
policies,
sense.
proposals, etc.
That's exactly right, and it's just a way of making the big picture come to life.
Okay, we run out of time. We've been looking at a
No.
big picture here that you're trying to get across. We do want to mention, and you probably have seen it on our screen, that www.otalk.org is where you can find out more information about this. You're also diversity and how our community is becoming more diverse, and I suppose how that affects a number of things, including economic development. But you've got a play coming up. Is that right?
Right.
Tell us about it.
We do have, it's an original theater production, and the first script was delivered today, and so people will be looking at it. But we have a playwright in Omaha who's writing the script, and we have a group of young women who are going to write and perform the music. And the play is going to talk about how we come together again in Omaha.
So it's
We
very
like to
local
sort
in
of-
appeal.
It is. It's looking at some of the history of Omaha. I know that we like to say that things are okay in Omaha, but underneath the surface there are still some issues around race and
The name
other
of the
things.
play is Walking Behind to Freedom, and the dates and the place.
It's Friday, May 7th, and Saturday, May 8th, 7:30 p.m. at First United Methodist Church.
And they could find more about that on your website.
Right.
And also the meetings that you're going to be having, the sort of
Economic conference is Sunday afternoon, March 14th from 2 to 5 p.m. Temple Israel, 69th and Cass.
okay, and you can check www.otalk.org. Is that right?
Yes.
I want to thank you for being with us. It's always good to open ourselves to new ways of looking at things. So thank you very much, Dennis, Margaret, and Sherry. And again, OTAK on the internet. And you can find us on the internet and these shows. And we'll see you next week.
To view this edition of Consider This or past programs, visit our website at unotv.unomaha.edu. For comments or questions, call 402-554-2516 during regular business hours. Consider This is a production of UNO Television.